Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something most of us deal with pretty often, but maybe haven't, really thought that deeply about it. We're talking about restaurants. And we've got a whole stack of sources here, thanks to you, covering, well, everything: definitions, history, some keywords, even those cultural differences you might bump into. So our mission really is to unpack all of that, pull out the good stuff, the essential bits, and maybe give you a few of those aha moments about, a place you thought was pretty straightforward. Let's kick things off with the absolute basics from the material. What is a restaurant exactly?
Well, the simple definition from the sources is it's a place where you pay money to sit down and eat a meal that's cooked and served right there. Pretty simple, right? But, and this is where it gets interesting straight away, the word itself tells a story. Restaurant.
Ah, yeah, the origin. That's quite revealing.
Totally. It comes from this old French word, restaher, meaning to restore or to refresh. So the very first places called restaurants were apparently focused on selling things like restorative broths, things to revitalize you.
Huh. So not just about filling you up, but about actually restoring you in some way. That's quite a different angle.
Exactly. And the sources do point out that even now, restaurants are often more than just, fuel stops. They're places we go to connect, to celebrate, maybe do business, or just escape for a bit.
They restore something else, maybe? Connection or just a break?
Precisely. It adds this whole other layer to the experience, I think.
Okay, so if that's the idea, where did this kind of public place offering these restorative meals, where did it really start to look like what we know today?
Right. So diving into the history provided,
Yeah.
the modern restaurant concept that seems to really take off in 18th century France.
Paris specifically.
Paris, yeah. Around the 1760s is what the sources pinpoint. This is where you get figures like Goulanger.
Right, him selling those broths we mentioned, the restorative stuff.
Exactly. Maybe not a full restaurant like we'd picture, but a key step, offering something specific to the public outside of, say, an inn.
And then there's that fascinating link to the French Revolution. It seems like that event actually kind of boosted the whole restaurant scene.
Yeah, it's a really interesting consequence outlined in the material. You had all these highly skilled chefs who used to cook for the nobility. Revolution happens, aristocracy gets overturned, and suddenly these chefs are out of a job.
So they needed somewhere new to ply their trade.
Pretty much. Opening public eating houses was a logical next step for many of them, and that really helped spread the concept.
Because before that, as the sources mentioned, eating out usually meant an inn or a tavern, right? Places mainly for travelers.
Yes, exactly. And you often didn't get much choice. You ate whatever the common meal was, maybe at a shared table.
So this whole idea of your own table, a menu with options, a waiter, that's actually quite new, historically speaking.
Surprisingly new. It really makes you appreciate that everyday experience is, in the grand scheme of things, a relatively recent invention.
Yeah, definitely puts a different spin on making a dinner reservation. Okay, so that's how it started. Let's jump to now. How do these places actually, work? The sources talk about the structure behind the scenes.
Yeah, they break it down into essentially two core teams that have to work together. You've got the kitchen staff.
The engine room.
Right. Chefs, cooks, line cooks, prep cooks, dishwashers. Everyone involved in actually preparing the food.
And then the other side.
The front of house.
Yeah.
These are the people you, the customer, usually interact with.
So waiters, servers, the host or hostess managing the door and seating, bartenders, sometimes a manager overseeing things out front.
Exactly. And the key thing, which comes through implicitly in the sources, is how much they depend on each other. Communication, timing.
Yeah.
It all has to sync up.
Makes sense. And right at the heart of that customer interaction is the menu. The sources mention a few different types.
You've got your fixed menu, sometimes called a table d'hôte, set courses, set price.
Like a tasting menu, maybe?
Sometimes, yeah. Then there's the buffet, which is pretty self-explanatory, serve yourself, all you can eat usually.
And the most common one, probably.
A la carte, where every single item, appetizer, main, dessert, side dish, has its own price. Gives you the most flexibility.
And the type of menu often gives you a clue about the style of the restaurant, too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Which sort of leads us nicely into the practical stuff, the language you actually use when you're there.
Right, the vocabulary. This feels important. Having the right words can really smooth things out.
Totally. Let's maybe walk through how you might use some of these key terms from the sources in a typical visit.
Good idea.
So you might start, before you even get there, by making a reservation. especially for popular places.
Okay, makes sense. Then you arrive.
You'll likely talk to the host or hostess first, the person managing the tables.
And once you're seated, you'll probably want the menu. Could I see the menu, please? Something like that.
Exactly. And on that menu, you'll see different sections, maybe an appetizer to start.
Then the main dish, which the sources note is often called the entree in the U.S., but means something different elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a good catch from the material. In the U.S., entree, main course. But in France, traditionally, l'entrée is the starter, the course before the main. So context matters.
Good tip. Okay, after the main, maybe dessert.
Mm-hmm. And the person helping you through all this is your waiter or waitress, or the more neutral term, server.
Right. And they might tell you about the specials, dishes not on the regular printed menu.
Exactly. Always worth asking about those.
And crucially, especially nowadays, knowing how to mention allergies. I have a food allergy. Super important.
Absolutely critical for safety. Then, towards the end.
Time to pay up. You ask for the bill or the check in the U.S.
Right. And then comes the question of the tip, or gratuity, which, as we'll see, varies wildly.
The sources also gave some other usable phrases, didn't they? Like asking for help choosing.
Yeah, like, what do you recommend? Always a good one if you're undecided.
Or practical things like, can we have some more water, please? Or taking leftovers, can I get this to go? Or takeaway.
Mm-hmm. And asking about payment, is service included? That's important regarding the tip. Or do you take credit cards? Still relevant sometimes.
And just, being polite. Thank you, that was delicious. Simple things.
Makes a difference. So the point for you, the listener, is that having this vocabulary, these phrases, it just empowers you, right? Makes navigating the whole thing easier, clearer.
Definitely. And you mentioned tipping. That brings us to the whole cultural side of things. The sources really highlight how different this can be around the world.
Oh, hugely different. It's fascinating. You take the U.S. and Canada, for instance.
Yeah.
Tipping isn't just nice. It's generally expected. It forms a big chunk of the server's income. So 15%, 20% is pretty standard.
Okay. But then you look somewhere like Japan.
Completely different story, according
Yeah.
to sources. Tipping is just not done. It can actually be seen as a bit awkward, even rude. Service is included in the price and the culture.
Wow. And Europe is kind of in the middle.
Often, yeah. You might see a service charge already added to the bill.
Right. Service caprice or something.
Exactly. But even then, leaving a small extra bit for good service is often appreciated, though not usually the large percentages seen in North America.
It's amazing how ingrained these customs are. It really changes the interaction.
It does. And for you traveling, it's crucial to know the local norm, isn't it? Avoids confusion or, accidentally causing offense.
It really shows that eating out is more than just food. It's tied up in culture.
Definitely. And speaking of different kinds of experiences, the sources also listed various styles of restaurants.
Ah, right. The categories. Let's run through those quickly based on the descriptions.
Okay, so you've got fast food,
Mhm.
quick, cheap, standardized.
Then casual dining, more relaxed sit-down places, maybe family-oriented.
Mm-hmm. Moving up the scale, there's fine dining. Elegant atmosphere, higher prices, more formal service, often more complex food.
Then the buffet. Serve yourself, focus on variety, often an eat as much as you want deal.
Yep. And cafes, usually lighter meals, coffee, pastries, more informal vibe.
Food trucks, too, mobile, often specialized, can be quite trendy.
Right. And lastly, the big category of ethnic restaurants, focusing on food from a specific culture or country.
Mhm.
Think Italian, Thai, Mexican, Indian.
So a huge range of options, each with its own kind of feel and expectation.
Exactly.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground here. We went from the French origins, that whole restorative idea.
Mm-hmm. And how the revolution played a part.
Right. Then into how restaurants actually run, the kitchen versus front of house.
The vocabulary you need, those key phrases,
Then the whole cultural side, especially with tipping variations globally.
which is just fascinating.
And finishing up with all the different types of places you might eat out.
And I think the big takeaway, weaving through all the source material, is that understanding these different facets, the history, the operations, the language, the culture, it can genuinely make your own dining experiences richer,
Yeah, you see it as more than just getting food.
Exactly. It's a whole system, a whole performance in a way. Service, atmosphere, ritual, connection. It's all part of the package.
Absolutely. And thinking about that, let's maybe circle back to that very first idea we talked about, that original French word, restaurer.
To restore, to refresh.
Yeah. So beyond just getting rid of hunger, let's leave you with this thought to chew on, building on what we've discussed, but taking it a step further. When you go out to eat, what parts of that whole experience really restore or refresh you?
Good question.
Is it the buzz of the place, the conversation? Is it that feeling of being looked after, not having to cook or clean up? Is it trying something new, the escape from the
Or
everyday?
maybe something totally different, unique to you.
Yeah. What is it about that restaurant experience beyond the food itself that truly gives you that sense of restoration? Keep that in mind next time you dine out. What kind of restoration are you really looking for?